The Psychology of Scarcity, Why You Feel Like You Never Have Enough Money. I'm going to tell you something that might make you angry. Your broke mindset isn't about how much money you actually have. I know someone who makes $30,000 a year and sleeps peacefully every night. I know someone else pulling in $200,000 who wakes up at 3 in the morning, chest tight, convinced they're one bad month away from losing everything. Same country, same economy, same inflation rates. The difference isn't in their bank accounts, it's in their heads. And here's what terrifies me about this. The person making less might actually be richer in every way that matters. Because while one of them learned to see opportunity everywhere, the other one trained their brain to see nothing but lack, nothing but danger, nothing but the edge of a cliff they're perpetually about to fall off. Your relationship with money was decided before you ever held a dollar bill. Someone programmed you. Maybe it was a parent who said, "We can't afford that." So many times it became your internal voice. Maybe it was growing up watching adults fight about bills, feeling the tension thick enough to choke on. Maybe it was something else entirely. But somewhere along the way, your brain built a story about scarcity, and now that story is running your entire financial life without your permission. The question that should haunt you right now is this. What if everything you believe about money is just a scar from someone else's wound? What if the poverty you feel has nothing to do with your actual circumstances and everything to do with a broken operating system you've been running since childhood? I'm going to show you exactly how this works, how your brain physically changes when it believes resources are scarce, and more importantly, how to reprogram it. But I need you to understand something first. This isn't about positive thinking or manifestation or putting a vision board on your wall and hoping the universe sends you a check. This is neuroscience. This is about the actual architecture of your thoughts and how scarcity literally rewires your prefrontal cortex, shrinks your ability to see solutions, and keeps you trapped in patterns that guarantee you'll never have enough no matter how much you earn. Let me paint you a picture of what scarcity does to your brain. And I mean physically does to the structure of your thinking. Researchers at Princeton and Harvard did studies on this, not on lab rats, but on actual human beings living real lives. They found something disturbing. When people operate under scarcity, whether it's time, money, or food, their IQ effectively drops. We're talking about losing 13 to 14 IQ points just from the cognitive load of feeling like you don't have enough. That's the difference between average intelligence and borderline intellectual disability. You're literally getting dumber when you think about scarcity. Your brain goes into what they call tunneling. Imagine you're looking through a narrow tube. You can see what's directly in front of you with intense focus, but you've lost all peripheral vision. That's your brain on scarcity. You become hyper-focused on the immediate problem, the bill due tomorrow, the empty tank of gas, the price tag that's just slightly too high, and in that tunnel vision, you lose the ability to see opportunities, alternatives, creative solutions. You make worse decisions. You take the payday loan instead of calling a friend. You skip the oil change that would have prevented the engine failure. You don't invest in the course that would have doubled your income because you can't see past next week's groceries. And here's the truly evil part of this. Scarcity becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Your tunnel vision causes you to make decisions that create more scarcity, which deepens the tunnel, which leads to worse decisions. And round you go. The cycle doesn't break on its own. It requires intervention. It requires you to understand that your brain is lying to you. If you're still watching, do me a favor. Hit that like button right now because what I'm about to tell you next is something the financial industry doesn't want you to know. And the algorithm tends to bury content that actually helps people instead of selling them something. Now here's where it gets personal, and I need you to really sit with this because it's uncomfortable. Your scarcity mindset didn't just fall from the sky. It was taught to you carefully and repeatedly, probably by people who loved you and were just passing down their own fear. Think about the phrases you heard growing up. Money doesn't grow on trees. We're not made of money. Do you think I'm made of money? Rich people are greedy. Money is the root of all evil. You have to work hard for every penny. Save for a rainy day because disaster is always coming. Each of those phrases is a little brick in the wall of your scarcity prison. Your parents didn't mean harm. They were trying to teach you caution, trying to prepare you for a world they experienced as hostile and resource-limited. But what they actually did was install a lens through which you now see every financial situation as a threat. You learned that money is always scarce, always slipping away, always something to grip tightly because letting go means disaster. And your nervous system absorbed this as fact, not opinion. Fact. When you see a price tag now, your body has a stress response before your rational mind even engages. Your cortisol spikes, your heart rate increases slightly, your brain starts running worst-case scenarios. This isn't a character flaw, this is conditioning. You've been trained like Pavlov's dogs, except instead of salivating at a bell, you panic at a number. The really insidious part is that this conditioning makes you avoid the very things that would set you free. You won't invest in yourself, because what if it doesn't work out? You won't start that business because what if you lose money? You won't negotiate for a raise because what if they say no and then they hate you? The scarcity mindset keeps you small, keeps you safe, keeps you stuck. And it feels like wisdom. It feels like you're being responsible and realistic. But you're not. You're being scared. There's a difference. Let me tell you about someone I know, and watch how this plays out in real life. She makes $45,000 a year. Decent job, nothing spectacular. She lives in a modest apartment, drives a 10-year-old car, shops at discount grocery stores. By every objective measure, she should feel financially stressed. But she doesn't. She told me once, and this stuck with me, she said, "I always have exactly what I need, and usually a little extra for something fun." Meanwhile, I know a guy pulling in $170,000. Beautiful house, new truck in the driveway, kids in private school. And he's drowning. He lies awake, calculating how many months he could survive if he lost his job. He snaps at his wife about small purchases. He feels this constant pressure in his chest like he's being slowly crushed. What's the difference between these two people? It's not the math. It's the meaning they've assigned to money and their relationship with it. The woman making less grew up poor. Actually poor. Not, we can't afford the name brand, poor, but sometimes we didn't have electricity poor. And somewhere in that struggle, she learned something powerful. She was resourceful. She learned she could figure things out. She learned that lack wasn't a death sentence, it was a puzzle. So now, when she faces a financial challenge, her brain doesn't flood with panic. It floods with curiosity. How can I solve this? Her nervous system stays calm, she can think clearly, she sees options. The man making more grew up middle class, comfortable, and his parents fought about money constantly despite having enough. He learned that money equals love, safety, worth, and that it's always at risk. No matter how much he has, it never feels like enough because enough isn't a number for him. It's a feeling he's been chasing his whole life and will never catch because the wound isn't financial. It's psychological. Do you see it now? Your broke feelings aren't about your broke reality. They're about your broke programming. Here's what happens in your brain when you're stuck in scarcity mode, and I want you to really understand the mechanics, because once you see how the machine works, you can take it apart. Your amygdala, that ancient lizard part of your brain responsible for detecting threats, becomes hyperactive. It's scanning constantly for danger, for not enough, for potential loss. Back when we were hunting and gathering, this was useful. If food was scarce, you needed that anxiety to motivate you to find more or ration what you had. But we're not in that environment anymore. You're not going to starve if you spend $12 on lunch instead of $8. But your amygdala doesn't know that. It just knows. Resource expenditure equals danger. Must protect, must conserve, must fear. At the same time, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for planning, creativity, problem-solving, and seeing the big picture, gets suppressed. Blood flow actually decreases to that region when you're in stress mode, so you're running on primitive survival instincts while your higher-level thinking is offline. This is why you make terrible financial decisions when you're stressed about money. You're literally not thinking with your full brain. You're thinking with the panicked animal part, and that part of you can't build wealth. It can only avoid immediate death. The tragedy is that this state becomes your baseline. You're not just stressed about money when a bill comes due. You're carrying a low-level financial anxiety all the time, humming in the background like tinnitus. You don't even notice it anymore. But it's there, draining your energy, narrowing your vision, keeping you in survival mode when you should be in creation mode. Wealthy people, and I don't mean people with money, I mean people with an abundance mindset, whether they're rich or not, operate from their prefrontal cortex. They see possibilities. They think long-term. They take calculated risks, not because they're smarter or more deserving, because their nervous system isn't screaming danger every time they think about money. So how do you reprogram this? How do you rewrite code that's been running since you were 5 years old? Code written by people you loved, reinforced by every financial stress you've ever experienced. First, you have to catch yourself in the act. You have to become aware of the scarcity narrative playing in your head. Most people never do this. They think the voice saying, "You can't afford it," or "This will never work," or "Money is too hard," is just objective reality. It's not. It's a story. Start noticing when scarcity thoughts arise. Don't judge them. Don't fight them. Just notice them like you're a scientist observing data. Oh, there's the thought that I'll never have enough. Interesting. There's the fear about this purchase. Noted. This simple act of observation creates distance between you and the thought. You are not your scarcity mindset. You are the awareness that can observe it. That distinction is everything. Once you're aware of the pattern, you can start questioning it. Is this thought actually true, or is it just familiar? When your brain says, "I can't afford this," is that factually accurate, or is it an emotional reaction? Sometimes the thought is true. Sometimes you genuinely can't afford something. But often, if you're honest, what you mean is, "I'm afraid to spend money on this," or "This feels risky," or "I don't believe I'm worth this investment." Those are very different statements than "I can't afford it." One is about numbers. The others are about fear and self-worth. Start replacing scarcity statements with abundance questions. Instead of "I can't afford this," ask, "How could I afford this?" Instead of "There's never enough," ask, "Where is there already enough in my life?" Instead of "Money is hard to make," ask, "What if making money could be easier than I think?" These questions shift your brain out of closed-loop panic and into open-ended possibility. Remember, your brain is a question-answering machine. Ask it a powerless question, and you'll get a powerless answer. Ask it an empowering question, and it will start searching for empowering answers. Now let me share something that's going to sound completely counterintuitive, maybe even offensive, if you're really stuck in scarcity. One of the fastest ways to reprogram your brain for abundance is to practice generosity when you feel like you have the least to give. I know what you're thinking. I don't have enough for myself, and you want me to give money away? Are you insane? Listen to me. I'm not talking about giving away money you need for rent. I'm talking about breaking the energetic and psychological grip that scarcity has on you. When you give, even small amounts, even $1 to someone who needs it more, even buying a coffee for the person behind you in line, you send a powerful signal to your subconscious mind. I have enough. I have more than enough. I have so much that I can share. Your nervous system relaxes. The grip of lack loosens just a little. You've probably heard people say, "You can't pour from an empty cup," and that's true for burnout and emotional energy. But with money, the cup isn't actually empty. You've just convinced yourself it is. Most people in developed countries with jobs and roofs over their heads are in the global 1%. You have enough. You have more than enough. But your brain, trained in scarcity, can't see it. Generosity is a radical act of reprogramming. It's you telling your ancient survival brain, "We're safe, there's enough, we live in abundance." And here's the weird part. The part that sounds like magical thinking, but is actually documented in psychological studies. People who practice generosity, even when they don't feel wealthy, report feeling wealthier. Not because money magically appears, because their perception shifts. They start noticing what they have instead of what they lack. And that shift in attention changes everything. What you focus on expands. If you focus on scarcity, you'll find endless evidence of scarcity. If you focus on abundance, you'll start finding evidence of that instead. The facts of your life don't change, your interpretation of those facts does. And your interpretation determines your feelings, your decisions, and ultimately, your outcomes. Let's talk about the climax of this whole psychological trap. The moment where scarcity thinking reaches its peak destructive power. It's when you become so afraid of not having enough that you sabotage the very opportunities that would give you more. I've watched this happen over and over. Someone gets a chance to invest in their education, to start a side business, to take a calculated risk that could double their income, and they freeze. The scarcity mindset screams, "What if you lose that money? What if it doesn't work? What if you end up with even less than you have now?" So they say no. They stay safe. They stay stuck. And 5 years later, they're in the same place financially, still afraid, still feeling like there's never enough. Still saying no to opportunities because the fear is just as loud as it was before. This is the peak of the scarcity trap. It's not that you don't have money. It's that your fear of not having money prevents you from doing the things that would get you money. You're trapped in a prison where you are both the prisoner and the guard. The door is unlocked, but you won't walk through it because what if there's danger on the other side? Meanwhile, people with abundance mindsets, they're not fearless. They feel the fear. But they've trained themselves to interpret that fear differently. They think, "I'm nervous, which means this matters. This could change things. Let me look at this rationally." They assess the risk. They make a plan. They move forward even while afraid. And sometimes they fail. Sometimes the investment doesn't pay off. Sometimes the business idea flops. But here's the secret. They don't interpret that failure as proof that they were right to be afraid. They interpret it as data. They learn. They adjust. They try again. Their identity isn't wrapped up in never losing money. Their identity is wrapped up in being someone who takes intelligent action toward their goals. The scarcity person sees one failure and says, "See? I knew I couldn't trust money. I knew I should have held on tighter." The abundance person sees one failure and says, "Okay, that didn't work. What did I learn? What's the next experiment?" One mindset leads to paralysis, the other leads to growth. And here's the thing that'll keep you up at night if you really let it land. The cost of staying stuck is always higher than the cost of trying and failing. Your brain has something called neuroplasticity. That's the fancy word for the fact that your brain can change, physically restructure itself, based on your thoughts and behaviors. The pathways you use most often become stronger, like trails in a forest that get wider and easier to walk the more people use them. The pathways you stop using fade away. Right now, your scarcity pathway is a 6-lane highway. You've been traveling down it for years, maybe decades. Thoughts of lack, fear of loss, anxiety about money. These all zip down that highway at 100 miles an hour without you even trying. The abundance pathway, if it exists at all in your brain, is an overgrown footpath. You've barely used it. Maybe you've never used it. Building that pathway, making it stronger than the scarcity highway, takes deliberate, repeated effort. This is where most people give up. They try thinking positively about money for 3 days, don't see their bank account magically fill up, and decide it doesn't work. But you're not trying to manifest money from thin air. You're trying to rewire your brain so that you can see opportunities, make better decisions, take intelligent action, and feel calm enough to let your prefrontal cortex do its job. That takes time. You didn't build your scarcity mindset in a week. You're not going to dismantle it in a week. But every single time you catch a scarcity thought and consciously choose a different thought, you're building that new pathway. Every time you feel the fear about money and do the smart thing anyway instead of the safe thing, you're building that pathway. Every time you practice gratitude for what you have, instead of obsessing over what you lack, you're building that pathway. 6 months from now, a year from now, you could have a completely different relationship with money. Not because you won the lottery, because you rebuilt your brain. And unlike winning the lottery, which statistically makes most people miserable because they still have scarcity programming, this change is permanent. Once you've rewired your thoughts, once you've trained your nervous system to relax around money, that's yours. No one can take it. The economy can crash. You can lose a job, you can face setbacks, but you won't lose the internal shift. You'll still be someone who sees possibility instead of panic. Let me give you a practical exercise that sounds simple but is actually profound if you do it consistently. Every single day, I want you to write down 3 pieces of evidence that you live in abundance. Not things you wish for, not goals. Actual current evidence. I had clean water to drink today. I have a bed to sleep in. Someone smiled at me. I helped a friend. I have shoes. This will feel stupid at first, especially if you're broke or struggling. Your scarcity brain will scream that this is denial, that you're ignoring real problems. You're not. you're training your attention. Because here's the truth. Abundance and scarcity exist simultaneously in your life right now. You have some things and lack others. You're safe in some ways and vulnerable in others. The question is, which reality are you focused on? If you wake up every day and immediately start cataloging everything you don't have, every bill you can't pay, every goal you haven't reached, you're training your brain to see lack. That becomes your filter. That becomes your identity. But if you start the day by noticing what's already working, what you already have, what's already enough, you train your brain to see abundance. And when your brain sees abundance, it relaxes. When it relaxes, you think more clearly. When you think more clearly, you make better decisions. When you make better decisions, you create better outcomes. It's not magic. It's just how your nervous system works. You cannot feel grateful and anxious at the same time. It's neurologically impossible. Those two states use different pathways. So if you can cultivate genuine gratitude, not toxic positivity where you pretend problems don't exist, but real appreciation for what's actually present in your life, you short-circuit the anxiety loop. You give yourself access to the part of your brain that can actually solve problems instead of just panicking about them. Do this for 30 days. Just 30 days. 3 pieces of evidence each day that you live in abundance. Watch what happens to your baseline emotional state. Watch what happens to the decisions you make. Watch what happens to the opportunities you suddenly notice that were there all along but you couldn't see because you were tunneling. There's something else you need to understand about scarcity mindset, and it's probably the most uncomfortable piece of this whole puzzle. Sometimes your scarcity story is protecting you from something scarier than being broke. It's protecting you from the responsibility of abundance. Think about it. If you believe that you'll never have enough, that money is too hard, that wealth is for other people but not you, then you have a perfect excuse to never try. You never have to risk failure. You never have to face the possibility that you could have everything you say you want and still not be happy. You never have to confront the real work of becoming someone who can handle success. Scarcity is a comfortable prison for a lot of people. It's familiar. It's been your story for so long that it's become part of your identity. I'm just not good with money. I'm not a rich person. People like me don't get those kinds of opportunities. These statements feel true because you've repeated them so many times. But they're not truth. They're just well-worn grooves in your thinking. And here's the terrifying question you need to ask yourself. What would you have to face about yourself and your life if money wasn't the problem anymore? If you had enough, if you felt abundant, if financial stress wasn't taking up all that mental space, what would you have to look at then? For some people, it's their relationships. For others, it's their lack of purpose. For others still, it's a deep unworthiness that has nothing to do with dollars and everything to do with childhood wounds. Money becomes the scapegoat. I'd be happy if I just had more money. But that's rarely true. Studies of lottery winners prove this. Most of them are miserable within a few years. Some end up broker than before they won, because the money didn't fix the internal programming. Your scarcity mindset might be the last defense against having to do the deeper work of figuring out who you are and what you actually want from this life. And if that's true for you, if you felt something clench in your chest when you read that, then you've just discovered the real work. This isn't about money at all. It never was. So where does this leave us? You've seen how scarcity rewires your brain, how it was programmed into you, how it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, how it protects you from deeper fears. You've seen that the path out isn't about making more money, though that might happen as a side effect. The path out is about changing your relationship with money, with enough, with safety, with yourself. This is the work. This is the real work. And nobody can do it for you. No amount of money will do it. No financial advisor, no budgeting app, no side hustle will fix a scarcity mindset. Those are tools, and tools are useless in the hands of someone who's still running broken programming. You have to go into the code. You have to look at the beliefs you inherited and decide consciously whether you want to keep them. Most people never do this. They sleepwalk through their entire financial lives, reacting from fear, wondering why they never get ahead, blaming external circumstances while the real problem hums away in their subconscious mind, unchallenged and unchanged. But you're still here. You're still reading. That means something. That means part of you knows this is the missing piece. Part of you is ready to stop running from this and start reprogramming. It won't be comfortable. You're going to have to sit with fear. You're going to have to challenge thoughts that feel like facts. You're going to have to take action while your nervous system screams at you to play it safe. But the alternative is staying exactly where you are, feeling exactly how you feel right now for the rest of your life. Is that acceptable to you? Can you live with that? Because if you can, put this down and go back to your regularly scheduled programming. But if you can't, if something in you is saying there has to be another way, then you've just found it. It's not out there. It's in here, in your thoughts, in your beliefs, in your willingness to question everything you think you know about money and scarcity and what's possible for you. I want to leave you with one final thought, and it's the thought that changed everything for me when I finally let it land. You are not broken. Your scarcity mindset doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It means you're human. It means you learned from your environment. It means your brain did exactly what brains are supposed to do, which is create patterns based on experience to keep you safe. The problem isn't that you have a scarcity mindset. The problem is that you've been running that mindset unconsciously, treating it as truth instead of recognizing it as programming that can be changed. Every single human being alive has mental programming that isn't serving them. Every single person carries beliefs they didn't choose, reactions they didn't design, patterns they didn't consciously create. You are not uniquely damaged. You're not beyond help. You're not destined for financial struggle because of some character flaw or cosmic curse. You're just running old software. And software can be updated. This is actually the good news. If your financial situation was purely about circumstances, about the economy, about bad luck, about forces outside your control, you'd be powerless. But if it's about your mindset, about your beliefs, about the meaning you assign to money and your relationship with it, then you have all the power. You can change a mindset. You can rewrite a belief. You can build new neural pathways. You can train your nervous system to relax. You can learn to see opportunity instead of threat. Not overnight, not without effort, but you can. The question is, will you? Will you do the uncomfortable work of looking at your money story and deciding to write a new one? Will you practice the daily disciplines of gratitude, awareness, and intentional thinking even when it feels pointless? Will you catch yourself in scarcity mode and consciously choose abundance mode over and over and over until the new pathway is stronger than the old one? Or will you read this, feel inspired for about 20 minutes, and then go right back to your familiar patterns? Because familiar, even when it's painful, feels safer than change. Here's what I know. You didn't make it this far, through this many words, through this much uncomfortable truth, because you're content with where you are. You made it this far because something in you is ready for a shift. Honor that. Don't let this be another piece of content you consume and forget. Let this be the moment you decided things were going to be different. Not because you're going to manifest $1 million, but because you're going to change the way you think about money, and that change is going to ripple out into every decision you make, every opportunity you see, every risk you take or don't take. Start today, right now. Look around and find 3 pieces of evidence that you live in abundance. Say them out loud, feel the truth of them. Notice the scarcity thoughts when they arise tomorrow and question them. Ask yourself, is this true? Or is this just my programming? Practice generosity in some small way. Send the signal to your brain that you have enough. Do this every day. Build the pathway. Rewire the code. Become someone who operates from abundance instead of scarcity. Not because you have more money, but because you've changed the lens through which you see the world. If this resonated with you, if something shifted while you were reading this, I need you to do something for me. Subscribe to this channel right now. Hit the like button. Not because I need the validation, but because that simple action is you telling the algorithm, and more importantly, telling yourself, that you're committed to this change. That you want more content that challenges you, that pushes you to grow, that refuses to let you stay comfortable in patterns that don't serve you. And leave a comment below. Tell me what your biggest scarcity belief is. Tell me what you're going to do differently starting today. Tell me if you think I'm completely wrong about all of this. I don't care if you agree with everything I've said. I care that you're thinking about it, wrestling with it, engaging with it. That's where change happens, not in passive consumption, but in active engagement. So comment, even if you disagree, especially if you disagree. Let's talk about this, because your relationship with money is too important to leave on autopilot. Your life is too valuable to spend trapped in scarcity when abundance is just a shift in perception away. The code can be rewritten. The question is, will you pick up the keyboard?